Hey everybody, I'm back and I'm so excited to be recording new episodes again. I know it has been a very long time, probably a year at this point, since I have put out any new episodes, and quite a lot has happened in the time between my last episode. So I am ready to dive back in. I'm ready to start making episodes again, and I'm just really excited to be here. To anybody who's new, which is probably a lot of people, welcome. To anybody who has been listening to the podcast, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for continuing to support, even though I kind of just disappeared. And I am just really excited. I'm really, really excited to get back into this. I feel like now is the right time. I'm ready. My mindset is different. And in this episode, I will be sharing every pretty much everything that happened in the space between my last episode and now, for the most part. The topic of the episode will be holding on to the old. So, holding on to things that no longer serve us and how it hinders us and it holds us back. Okay, so let's take it back to January or February. I think February. Well, let's take it back to January 2024. So, January 2024, at the beginning of the year, I started off optimistic. I was like, I've been having a little bit of a rough patch. Things just haven't really taken off the way I wanted them to. And I've started off pretty optimistic January 2024. Like, okay, I know things have been a little bit rocky, but this is my chance for things to get better. Just optimistic about the new year. And it just seemed like everything was going wrong. Like, it just seemed like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. Like, I just wasn't happy. Even in the workplace where I was, other people would be commenting about it. It was just like chaos. It just felt like chaos. And at certain moments, it gave the energy of 2020 vibes, at the beginning of the pandemic where things just were really uncomfortable and really weird and just not good. So quickly, I lost the optimism that I started out with and realized that I didn't know, I didn't have no clue what was going on. I'm gonna be honest. I just didn't have a clue. So we fast forward to the end of 2020, the end of February. I had a car that I got in 2014 that I had held on to for a very long time, way past the time that I should have. I had wanted a new car for a year or two because that car had just gotten old. I was not taking good care of it at all. It wasn't in good shape. It was beat up. The radio didn't work. The driver's side window didn't roll down. Like, it just had a lot of ailments. But being that I had already paid it off, being that I was comfortable with it and I was too scared to go and get another car payment, I held on to that car. And towards the end of 2023, I had put in a lot of money to get the car repaired, which meant loans. Because I did not have, I was teaching at the time, I was preschool teaching. I wasn't making enough money to pay for the type of repairs that the car needed. It needed a starter and it broke down and I had to get it towed. Like, it was just a mess. Clear signs that I was supposed to get rid of the car, but me being fearful, me not knowing how I was going to get to work, what would my mom say because I'm giving up a car and I don't have another one? What if I have to ride the bus? All these things kept me from getting rid of the car, even though I knew the expiration date had passed and I wanted a different car. I just wasn't in the mindset of pursuing getting a new one. So, February 2024, the end of it, I go to my car because I'm getting ready to go to an event. I go downstairs in my car and there's glass all over the ground. Somebody had broken into my car and it was on parked on the street at my mom's house. And somebody, I guess, it was a thing. People were burglar, they were vandalizing people's cars. Okay. And so there's glass all over the thing. I'm stunned at this point. I walked out there and I'm just like, this is not my car. Like, who the whole back passenger window is smashed. Glass on the ground, glass inside the car. At this point, I had a whole bunch of stuff in the car and nothing was gone. I had a laptop in the car, I had clothes, like I was really not taking good care of this car at all. But nothing was gone. So in my head, I'm thinking, why would somebody just break the window just for fun? Like, why would you just break the window? Nothing is, I have a ton of stuff in the car and nothing is gone, literally. So after I got over the initial shock, I called my mom. I told her what happened. I called the police, filed a police report, did all that. Once I was on the phone with the police, they asked me, was anything else stolen? Did you really check in the car? And I was like, well, I didn't really. I just kind of looked in the back seat and, saw that nothing was missing. So I just assumed that everything was okay. So I go back downstairs to check the car and make sure that nothing is missing. And when I open the door, the passenger side door, I see that the bottom part of the steering wheel is on the floor. So whoever broke into my car had completely taken the steering wheel apart to the point where the car was not drivable. There was no way I would have been able to drive it. It wouldn't have been safe to drive. And my car was a 2020, a 2012. So it was, an older car, wasn't electric or anything like that, but it had been completely taken apart. So basically, it's probably likely that some kids were, learning how to hotwire cars on, social media or something and decided to practice on mine so they could take it for a joyride or something, and they weren't very good at it. So they tore it apart, broke my window, and weren't able to take it and, just jumped out of the window and left down the street. I still to this day have no idea what actually happened, but that's my theory. So, I have to like pick up the pieces literally of everything, and that was the day that spirit and God and universe showed me physically that it was time to get rid of the car. And to me, although I was extremely upset, extremely heartbroken, confused, I loved that car. I had a connection with it. It had gotten me through so many things. It was my very first car that I had gotten, in my name, that I had paid off. I was extremely upset about it. I also had the thought of, this is what I get. This is what I get. I knew I was supposed to get rid of this car. I knew it. And I was too scared. I just didn't make it a priority to get a new car. Even though I had been getting the signs that it was time to get a new car, I just couldn't let it go. And that was the universe's final straw with me. Is like, I'm trying to give you something new. I'm trying to show you that there's better out there for you and you're not listening. So here is the only way that you are going to let go of this raggedy car that keeps breaking down on you and has all kinds of issues, is for somebody to vandalize it and tear it apart to the point where you cannot drive it anymore because you're not listening. So, um, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Okay. No, I'm not getting sidetracked. I'm forgetting where I was going with this. But in any case, so yes, I lost the car that I had had for about 9 years at that point. I still had a job, but I had to start carpooling with my mom. My transportation, my way of getting around was limited because I didn't have a car anymore. And at that point, I had had a car for so long that I thought I was too good for public transportation. I was scared. I hadn't taken public transportation in like over 10 years. So I was just kind of like, oh, I don't want to get on the bus. I just had that kind of air about me like, "Ugh, I don't want to get on the bus. I don't have to ride the bus." Girl, you did have to ride the bus, but you just were refusing. Okay. So then that happened in February 2024. So then around that same time, beginning of March, or maybe even around the same time as I I lost my car, where I had to end up selling it. Um, God kept showing me signs that I needed to leave the job that I was in. So for context, I had been in this specific position, well, not position, but in a specific workspace, in and out of it for 10 years. So around the same time I got my car, I had been in and out of it. I would leave and then I would come back and then I would move away and then I would come back. And I just knew that that position was always open. I knew the doors were always open. It was something that I found easy to do. I had been working in early childhood since I was 18. So I knew how to be a preschool teacher. And I knew the familiarity of that workspace because I had worked there um, since the very beginning. So I knew that I could do what I wanted, not do what I wanted, but I had a little bit more flexibility than people who were newer coming in because they knew me and they knew my work ethic and my abilities and, all that other stuff. So I was, one of the top dogs there, basically. I was a big fish in the pond, and so I had a safety net, and that safety net allowed me to not try very hard because I knew that I had a fallback plan. I knew that I didn't have to try hard because I would at least be able to bring in some income. when I would move away, or I moved away a couple times to try and figure things out, I never really gave it a try because I was like, well, if this doesn't work, I'll just go back home and go back to my old job. It was just a safety net. And so around March of the same year, I started to get signs or just get the feeling that I needed to leave. Things had kind of turned sour. The environment wasn't the same. I just was, bumping heads with people that I usually would get along with. Things were starting to feel uncomfortable. And I just was like, I can't really see myself staying in this environment for much longer. I don't know how much longer I can do this. And, Spirit and God and the universe were just giving me hints here or there, just things that, the normal person or another person wouldn't see or wouldn't take as a sign, but me being me, I knew was a sign that this is going to be coming to an end very soon. And I was afraid that, just like with my car, if I didn't end it myself, that um, the universe would end it for me. And so I had these feelings, but I was still too scared to, really go through with it. I was just like, this doesn't feel like a good idea. How am I going to support myself? I had committed to a little, more responsibility, and it was the middle of the school year. It was just a lot of things that were making me super hesitant. I'm just like, why are you asking me to do this, Spirit? Why are you asking me to do this now, God? Like, can't you just wait a couple more months until the school year's over? Like, why does it have to be right now? And the more I resisted, the more signs that I got that it was time to go, the more nervous I got, the more, tense I got, and the more I just ruminated. And to kind of fast forward through things a little bit, eventually it got to the point where I just had to go. And so I had to make the choice. I had to, you know, and make the difficult decisions. And, something happened that kind of accelerated that for me. So, it was at a point where it was kind of like my out in a way, where this thing happened. I was like, okay, this is a really big sign. And this is a really big thing of like, I don't want more of these types of things to happen. It wasn't anything super bad, but it was enough for me to be like, okay, I just can't stay here anymore. And I can't deny that this time period is coming to an end. It's time for me to go. I've outgrown this environment. I'm, trying to change myself as a person. I'm trying to change my habits and do different things. And it's really hard to do when I'm stuck in an old environment where my old habits are alive and well. The things that I used to do a lot, like gossiping and talking about, people and complaining, were alive and well in that space. And I was familiar with people. So that's what we did. That's how a lot of my relationships there, we bonded because we would complain about the work environment. We would complain about this or that, but nobody really ever took action or did anything about it. It was just a well-known thing that we all complain about. And so, with all of that combined, it just got to a point where I finally did end up leaving. And it was not easy. It just kind of turned everything upside down. People were upset. I, ended up severing not real, deep relationships, but connections that I had had for a while that some people that I thought really cared about me and wanted the best for me. Didn't feel like it at the end, I'll say. And everybody has their version of the story. So, who knows what was happening on the other side. I just felt differently than I thought I would feel leaving this space because I had been there for so long. I just had the ideal that things would end in a more beautiful way. And it ended up being way more messy. So it's not what happened at all. Obviously there's more to the story, but I'm not going into super detail, but you get the idea. So I ended up leaving. It was not, like a happy send off, wasn't well wishes. Some people, yes, most people, I won't say most people, but some people, yes, some people, no. And for me, then I had to sit in that, sit in the choices that I made, sit in the decisions that I made, sit in the ramifications of me leaving, what that looked like. how that felt for other people. And also, my people pleasing tendency of doing what I feel other people want me to do versus what's right for me flared really bad. So it was extremely difficult for me. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew that if things hadn't come to that place where it was like, okay, this is my out, it would have ended worse than that. I would end up getting fired or something. I just felt like something even worse than this is going to happen because I know I can feel it in my bones that I'm not supposed to be here anymore. And so I have to, something has to give. So that's where it ended up. So in the aftermath of that, I did, also have to explain to my family why I didn't work there anymore, why I didn't have a job anymore, what had happened. And that wasn't easy. That brought a lot of tension. That was really scary to have to explain that to my mom as well and to have those conversations with her because I was living with her at the time. I didn't have a real plan of how I was going to move out. I was struggling as it was just as a preschool teacher because they do not get paid what they should get paid. Just in general, the field of preschool teaching, it does not get the respect it deserves. And so I didn't have anything. I just had myself. Like, my mom, of course, wasn't happy because we were already in a place where we were struggling. We were thinking about moving. Um, I had just lost my car. Like, I just didn't have a leg to stand on. I didn't have any other opportunities. I didn't have any light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't have anything to look forward to or to say, like, or reassure her about, with the situation that was happening. And I saw it going a lot differently in my mind than it went, but that's not how it ended up. So here I am now at the end of March with no car, no job, no prospects, no idea what just happened. But I knew that it was for a reason. And I had that fear of things ending catastrophically because of what had just happened with my car. So I was like, I'm pretty sure that this is how things were supposed to play out because just things were falling apart in that workspace. But I have no idea why that just happened. I have no idea why it happened when it happened. Why didn't universe and God have, a better plan than this? Because this does not feel good. So anyway, um, I started off a little trying to be optimistic about what was happening, just to kind of keep the faith and, maybe this is for a reason. Maybe this is so that I can, get my business off the ground and I can start recording my podcast and things are going to be better because I want to be an entrepreneur anyway. So maybe this happening was, for a good reason and, being optimistic about that. But the thing about it is, as spiritual as I am, in that space, it takes money to make money. And I didn't have any. I didn't have any savings because I wasn't bringing a lot of income in as it was, and I didn't have a job. So it was a little bit bleak. I still was optimistic. I was still manifesting. I was still, believing in myself and doing all this and trying to figure out ways of how this could work out for me to be the entrepreneur that I had always dreamed of being. And it wasn't until after I had come out of all of that and gotten on the other side of it that I realized that that was never what that time period was supposed to be for. That time period was never supposed to be the launching pad for my business, for my podcast, for any of that. It was a time for me to sit down, to be still, and to get closer to God and to the universe because they had been trying to get through to me for years and I wasn't listening. And so this is the way that they were trying to get my attention and say, I have better for you. You're holding on to these things that are clearly past their expiration date, and you're not listening to the fact that you can do better because you don't really believe you can do better because you have never, seen it or you have no idea how it's going to work out, but you're holding yourself back and you think you're doing the right thing, but you're stuck in this cycle of leaving this toxic workplace and then coming back and, not believing you can get a new car, but you really know you need one and you're just not doing what you're supposed to be doing right now. So the universe was like, let me just sit you down to where you can't really do anything else but spend time with me and with yourself because you don't have a car and you don't have any money, even if you did have a car, you don't have money to put gas in it. So that's what I did for about 6 months. 6 months? Let me see, actually. March. Yeah, 6 months. Um, 6 months of tears, 6 months of sadness, of grief, of confusion, anger, all the emotions you can think of. There was some happiness, moments of joy here or there, and I didn't get to a state of being depressed, but I was really, really confused. And at a certain point, I was really, really angry with God and with the universe for blowing my life up like that. I was blaming them for everything that had happened. Why is nothing working out? I'm applying for all these jobs, nothing's sticking. I'm trying to build my business, nothing's sticking. I am in desperate need of money at that time, and I can't even rub two nickels together. Literally, at one point was digging in the couch for change so that I could do my laundry. It got to a point that I hadn't been in since my early 20s. And I was 34. So I'm just like, I've done all of this spiritual work. I've done all of this spiritual work on myself. I've been obedient. I've worked on myself. I've gone through the dark night of the soul. I've done this, I've done that. And this is where you have me. Why do you have me in this space? Why? I've done so much. And there's people who have not done nearly as much of the work that I've done. And they get to be financially stable. They get to experience X, Y, and Z. But you have me here struggling, literally. Why? So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of tears and frustration and angry conversations with God of like, why would you do this to me? And there were moments where I wanted to turn my back on my spiritual journey. And I just wanted to be done with it because I felt like this is the reward that I get for all the work that I've done. This is, the thanks I get for, being the one to change a lot of the courses through of both of my, my family history. This is how it ends up for me. And it looked really bleak because I had no idea what was going to happen on the other side. And I did not see any light of the end of the tunnel because um, in my head, I'm like, okay, my mom is really on my back about being able to contribute in the house, not just sitting up in the house, not being able to do anything for myself or for, to help contribute. She's not letting up. I can't really just sit here and relax and just, meditate all day. I have to do something because she needs me to do something, or she is putting the pressure on me to do something. So I feel I have low self-esteem now, not because of her, but it was an environment where I felt less than and I didn't feel good enough because I had nothing to offer as far as finances were concerned, or I had nothing going for me career-wise. I just was there. So I had already kind of started the re-enrollment process for my graduate program. So I had started it. So I was doing schooling at the time, but I wasn't really happy. I just felt like I needed to pick school back up because I had nothing else going for me. So at least if people ask me, or, I see people when I'm out and they ask me what I have going on, at least I can say I'm in graduate school because I don't have a car. I don't have a job. I don't have any prospects. I'm not dating anybody, but I am in graduate school. So that was part of the reason why I ended up really pursuing going back to that program because I had withdrawn from it because I hated that program with everything in me. It was just not a good fit for me, but I felt like I needed something to validate me. And so that's what I ended up choosing. So, yeah, during this time, I was struggling with trusting God, with trusting universe, with understanding why I was in this season. I was also in graduate school, so that took up a lot of my time. But I still did not feel worthy. I didn't feel good enough. I felt really bad about myself. I just felt like I had nothing to offer. And like I said, that went on for about 6 months. And during that 6 months, I really just went internally, during the times where my mom was at work and I was at home by myself. I had nothing but time to do some internal work and start getting back into podcasts that I used to listen to, and um, you know, meditating and journaling again and all the stuff that I had. still been doing, but I hadn't really been giving a lot of time to. I had nothing but time to do. Now, um, I didn't feel like I feel like I wasn't able to really fully get the entire benefit of what that season was supposed to be for because, my mom was so adamant about me getting a job and contributing, rightfully so. I was living in her space, and now I wasn't contributing, and was supposed to have been planning to move out, and so just of course, rightfully so. But in this season, in that space, I feel like that was the universe and God saying, now is the time for you to sit down and reassess, regroup, and to get stripped of all this material stuff that you are validating yourself with. But you're not really happy and you're not really making any real progress. But it kind of looks like you are because you're working and you have a car, so you can kind of hang your hat on that a little bit, but you're not really making any real progress. Like, how are you really going to get out of your mom's space? How are you really going to get on your own 2 feet? And at this point, I had never been out on my own. I had always lived with family or with somebody else. And that was a dream that I had, but it just never seemed attainable because, again, I was in the early childhood space since I was 18. I never tried anything different and I never thought I could do anything different because that was where all my experience was. That's what my degree was in. And so to me, it was like, well, who's going to hire me with no experience? Who's going to give me a chance? So I never really even tried. Um, so yeah, so anyway, this was, all the culmination of what was happening in those 6 months. Just me figuring out who am I and what do I want. And I feel like that was what that moment was for, to get closer to God and God stripping everything else away and saying, all you need is me. All you need is to focus on me and to believe in me and to trust me and to, trust in my guidance. You don't need all these external things that you're holding on to so desperately. You need to learn how to let go of things when it's time to let go. You need to learn how to believe that you deserve more, that you can have more, that you don't have to hold on to the old because it's familiar. You need to have the experience of, you know, th- things ending badly in that workspace because now you can't go back. So it's not a safety net for you anymore. So, so all those things were happening for a reason. I didn't see it in the moment. I was pissed. I was super pissed in the moment. Looking back on it now, a year later, I can come out of it and see, okay, this is what everything was. But in the moment, I was pissed. I was hurt. I was upset, and none of it was making sense. So I was applying for a bunch of jobs all the time, going in to try and, get applications, half-heartedly doing so because I really didn't want to work in a 9 to 5. I just didn't want to do that. But I also knew that it wasn't fair for me to just kind of hang around and not at least try since I was, you know, depending on my mom even more heavily now for everything because I couldn't afford to buy anything, toiletries, food, nothing. So I would, I was applying for a bunch of jobs online. I would either not hear anything back or would get rejected, or I went on a couple interviews and then never heard back. So nothing was working. And I applied for probably 100 jobs, if not more, and nothing stuck. Nothing was working. Nothing panned out. Some things, seemed like they were going to work out, and then they just didn't. And by the time summer came, my sister and my niece came to visit, and they stayed with us for 3 weeks. And that was kind of like a break for me to kind of give myself a break and have something else to focus on, have, new energy in the house with me and my mom because things, they weren't tense, but they were kind of tense. And rightfully so, we were in a small space together every day. She's coming home every day from work, and I'm just, there in her space again. She doesn't get time alone because now um, I don't have a car and I don't have anywhere to go. So I'm there all the time, So it was good to have my sister and my niece come in because it kind of mixed everything up and kind of decreased the tension a little bit. Um, And so, yeah, so when they came, then, I was able to enjoy life a little bit, but still struggling a little bit, still going on interviews, still not sure what the path was going to look like. Had no idea what I was going to do because it just seemed like everything that I was trying and that I knew how to try wasn't working. So, my sister, towards the end of her visit, ended up telling me that there was going to be a position opening for the company that she worked for, but I would have to move to a new state, to a new city that I had never been to. And so a part of me was like, I can do that job, would they let me work remote? And at this point, I'm still not trying to leave my hometown. I'm still not trying to leave my comfort zone. I'm still not trying to really leave my mom's house. I'm still in my head thinking that my plan, my plan of starting my life in my hometown around my familiar people and in my comfort zone is gonna work. Like I can get this good paying job that's based out of Texas, but I can still live here in California. I don't have to change. I don't have to adjust or adapt. I don't have to go through the homesickness. I don't have to move to a new place and start all over again. I can just get the job and stay here. And it's funny, the other day I was going through my voice recordings for some reason, and I came across one that I had made in 2021 when I was living in Houston. And it's just me going on about how I realized that I don't have to live in, Houston to be happy. I can build my life in California and I can do all those things in California. I don't have to force myself to be somewhere else. I can be in my comfort zone and still have the life that I desire. And it's just all these things where listening back to it now, it sounds ridiculous that I'm even like, and I'm serious in that recording. I'm like hella serious. But listening back to it, I'm like, girl, just started laughing because I'm like, girl, you literally you sound ridiculous. And this is me talking to me. Like just sound ridiculous. Like some people maybe they do thrive in their hometowns, but you were not in a place that was going to be thrivable. You were not in a place that was really challenging you to try for more or strive for more or to put a lot of effort towards things because you didn't have to. You knew you had a safety net because your mom wasn't going to let you be homeless. So you didn't really have to try that hard. And that's the excuse that I made. Every time that I would move to Texas, because that's where my sister lived, I would come back home because it was just too hard. I didn't want to do it. Granted, I just didn't like, the city that I was living in. It didn't mesh with me. I didn't like it. However, I also knew that if I went back home, I could get my old job back and I could go live with my mom. Um, and that's just where my mindset was. So I forgot where I was going with that. I bad. I got ADHD, y'all. Give me a minute. Okay, so anyway, um, so yeah, that's where my mindset was. My mindset was just in I can still have everything that I want. I can have a thriving business. Everything can pop off, and I don't have to leave my comfort zone. That was not the case. So it ended up being that, my sister talked to her boss and said, "Hey, my sister she's got a little bit of experience in this field, not much, but she can do the job. Would you be able to let her do this?" And at first, it was a no for the position that I was hoping for. But it was like, oh, well, we have a part-time position to kind of do some office stuff that we kind of need help with that we've fallen behind on. Maybe she can come and do that. I can guarantee her, 4 or 5 weeks of work. But after that, I don't know. And at that point, I was kind of desperate. I had no other prospects at home. I had no income whatsoever. And so, of course, I wanted something a little bit more stable than, 4 or 5 weeks and then not knowing. But the possibility of, you know, um, having something was better than nothing. So I was like, okay, just tell me, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So it ended up being that while my sister was in California before, she even went back home, the position that I originally had wanted ended up really actually being open. Something didn't work out with somebody else, and they really actually needed somebody for that position. So I did some soul searching, did some praying, because I was like, this is August, and I would need to go into September. I would need to move, pack everything up, and move in September. And I was scared because I'm like, I'm not really giving, I feel like I need more time. I need to prepare. I need to go visit before I move so I can make sure I like it. And, I have to do all these things before I just pick up and move. What am I going to do? So I prayed on it, I meditated on it, and I really honestly feel like when I would ask for a sign or when I would ask God to confirm.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
For me that it was the right thing for me to move. I don't feel like I got concrete answers or a concrete yes, but I also didn't get a concrete no. And so at a certain point, I just had to make the choice myself and be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pick up and I'm gonna move in, 3.5, 4 weeks, and I'm just gonna move to Texas again, to a new city. So that's what I did. So I spent the next 3.5 weeks just getting, myself together, figuring out what I was gonna do, decluttering, getting rid of stuff, and basically just preparing myself for this move that was happening way sooner than I had anticipated. So in the midst of that, I'm also like, saying goodbye to everybody. I think I mentioned that before. Just really getting prepared. And I'm also at that time praying and just manifesting, writing things down that I would like to happen. Now that this big change is happening, just being excited for what's to come. Because again, prior to this, I was in a struggle season. I was in a huge tower moment. Everything had fallen apart. I didn't have anything going for me at home, and it just felt like everything had expired. There was nothing left for me there. And at that point, that's why it was easier for me to make the decision to leave, because it's like, well, what else is there? If I stay here in my hometown, in my comfort zone, literally nothing is working out. Like no jobs are sticking. I've lost everything almost, and there's no reason for me to stay here. So it was just like, just take a leap of faith. There's an opportunity coming. There's a light at the end of the tunnel finally after this, 6 months of darkness. So just go. And I feel like that's a lesson I'd like to emphasize here at this part of the story is if you have been holding on to something because it's familiar or it's comfortable and it's easy, maybe ask yourself if it's best for you. Obviously, everybody has their own journey. You get to make your own choices and decisions. It's your life, all of that stuff. And especially if you've been given signs and, um, you can tell that things are just not panning out, it may be because you need to leave. And it may be because you need to relocate. It may just be that where you're trying to make things happen is not the place where it's supposed to happen. It's kind of like when if you like a garden or something, sometimes you need a certain type of soil to make a plant grow, or sometimes things are not in season. And, in that season, that particular crop or plant isn't going to grow because it's not the season for that. So it's just about being honest with yourself and not being letting fear hold you back. I won't say not being afraid because I was afraid the whole time. I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had never been to this city before. I had no idea what to expect. I had to move in with my sister. I felt bad about that. Um, so it was a lot of things happening, but I didn't let that stop me from doing what I knew was right. And I also knew that if I played my cards right and I, kept my head on straight and stayed focused, that I would reach the goals that I set out for myself and I wouldn't have to stay with my sister forever. I could move out eventually on my own. So it was about taking a leap of faith, and it was about my faith being larger than my fear at that point. So that's what I did. I took a leap of faith and I moved. I packed everything up at the end of August, and then in September, I took my flight and I moved to where I currently reside and started my new life. And it was really scary. It was sad. It was lonely. The homesickness was not nearly as bad as it had been in the past when I had moved away before. It actually was surprising to me how I wasn't as homesick, but I definitely had moments of homesickness, sadness, remorse, like, why did I have to come all the way out here to do this? Feeling alone, feeling lonely, all those emotions. I went through all of that stuff. And I also knew that the alternative wasn't something that I wanted to go back to. So it was either sink or swim at this point. And again, this was a field that I didn't have a lot of experience in. The little bit of experience that I did have it didn't end well, because that job environment was also toxic. It was a job, a job that I had for about a month and a half or so, and it didn't end well. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. And that was another moment in my life where I didn't listen to I didn't listen to my intuition. I didn't listen to the signs that spirit was giving me at that point in time. Because at that office, and this was not in childcare, this was in a completely different field. At that time when I started that, new job, at a certain point, I would get sick every time I walked into that office. Like every time I walk into the office, I get a migraine. My stomach would start acting up. I'd have to get up and go to the bathroom every 10, 15 minutes. Like my body was telling me, you got to get out of here. This is not a good environment for you. Everybody in here is complaining. They're miserable. They're unhappy with their jobs. They hate what they do, but they show up every day and just complain. The people that I was working under didn't really want to train me. They didn't want somebody that was new like me to the field. They wanted somebody that already knew what to do, and I didn't. So it just was not a good environment for me, but I was too scared to leave. I was too scared to quit. I didn't have another alternative, and I ended up getting fired from that job. And it was unexpected, and it hurt my self-esteem for a long time. Hurt my self-esteem for a really long time because I had never been fired before. I wasn't expecting to be fired the day that I showed up. I had no idea that it was even to that point where they just didn't want me anymore. Nobody ever said anything. And so I was blindsided. Looking back on it, I was not prepared for that job. I was not prepared for that type of job, for an office job, for everything that goes into working an office job, just because I hadn't had any experience with it. I worked in preschool, I worked with kids. Um, I didn't know what you needed and the type of qualities you needed to bring to the table for that type of job. And again, I didn't listen to my intuition. I didn't listen to my body. I knew that I needed to leave, but I was too scared, and then I ended up getting fired. So that was another reason why when I started getting the signs and everything, the feeling again at my old job that previously talked about, the one that I had been in and out of for about 10 years, I knew what the ending could be if I didn't listen, because I had had that experience already. And then the same thing with my car. Same thing happened with my car. I didn't listen, and it ended badly. So that's another reason that led me to um, choosing to leave that job. So anyway, when yeah, hold on, yo. Okay, okay, yes, I remember now. Bear with me if you're still here. I really appreciate you. Um, but yeah, so at this point, I started the new job after I moved to my new city, and it was in a new field, but it was the field that I had previously gotten fired from. So I had a lot of insecurities, self-doubt, fear. My nervous system was trying to ring the alarms. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, just going into it feeling like I failed the last time that I did this. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just nervous because I'm learning everything on the fly. I have a little bit of a training, but not like formal training. And I just dove in head first. So I feel like that was another sink or swim moment where it was like either you do this job that you've been given, with now having an income again and being able to build yourself up to a better place, or you get too scared and you mess it up, or you quit because you're too scared to do it. And that just wasn't an option for me. It was like, no, I have to every day, even when I make mistakes at this job, even when I'm feeling like a fool, even when I'm nervous or scared that I'm going to get fired because, that PTSD is coming back up from having the shock of being fired without having any clue that it was coming. Even on the worst days, I still had to keep showing up because I knew that the purpose was greater than my fear. I knew that the alternative was to not have a job at all. And I also knew how hard it was to get a job. I had tried for months to get a job and it seemed impossible. So at that point, I was just like, no, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to show up every day and I'm going to do the best that I can do. Sometimes I was really hard on myself when I made mistakes. I cried a couple times in the office. Just out of frustration or just feeling like, my mistakes were so horrible and just beating myself up a lot. And ultimately, everything turned out really well, but there were some rough days. So, anyway, the point of this episode and the point of me sharing that story was for me to share my experience with holding on to things that I know were expired and the way that things can turn out. This isn't to say that that's always how it's going to happen, but especially if you are somebody who is spiritually led, if you are getting nudges and signs and synchronicities, or you just feel it in your body that it's time for something to come to an end, it's time for something to be done, you need to, take that into consideration, pray on it, pray with consult with your spirit team, really get clear on what the next steps are for you, and then act. Because if you don't, especially talking to people who are on a spiritual journey, because they often have divine assignments and ways and things that your life is supposed to play out because you're here for a greater purpose. And if you hinder that process at a certain point, the universe, spirit, God is going to move things for you because you are supposed to be, you have a divine assignment. You need to fulfill certain things in order to get to that, um, the place that you're meant to go. And life is a never ending journey. So, of course, you're always going to have different places to go, but at different points in your life, there's going to be different milestones and things that you need to get to. And anything that's in the way, anything that's holding you back, is either you move it out of the way or it's going to get moved out of the way. So if you are somebody like me who had feared change, had been scared of letting people down, disappointing people, people judging you, not knowing what's next, feeling anxious about uncertainty, I understand. I totally understand. I still have that experience sometimes to this day. And I also know how painful it can be if the ending has to come from the universe. Like if they have to through with a tower moment and wipe everything out. So, and tower moments can happen whether you like it or not. Even if you're doing all the right things, tower moments can still happen. But at least do what you can to not be holding on to old stuff. Like figure out how to release that kind of stuff. When something is old and it's expired and it's done in your refrigerator, you throw it out. You don't hold on to it. Maybe you do, but for the most of the time, if something is moldy and stinky and old and gross, you're going to throw it out. And that's kind of how we have to view life a little bit. Obviously, our life situations may not be moldy, stinky, and gross, maybe. But if something just feels stale and stagnant, especially if you are in a place that you have been in for a long time, and I mean physically, like in your hometown or around people that you have been around for your whole life or for a long time, sometimes the energy can get stagnant because you learned all you need to learn. You know where everything is, you know the lay of the land, you have your favorite spots, you have your favorite routines, and you don't really have to challenge yourself to anything new anymore because there is nothing new. And it's good to challenge yourself to new things because that's how you grow. So please don't let fear be the reason why you don't um, follow your purpose, follow your passions, and get to where you are meant to get to. And notice I said, don't be afraid. I didn't say, no, notice I didn't say don't be afraid because you can still be afraid. I was scared the whole time, but I did it anyway. So that's the lesson that I want anybody that's listening to take away from this episode is okay, be scared and do the right thing anyway. whatever the right thing is for you in that moment after you have gotten some guidance and you feel like you're making the right choice, act on that. Because fear is a lot of the times is just in our heads. Of course, anything can happen, but a lot of the times the fears that we have in our head are made up and amplified. So our brain is just making up old stories from old experiences and hyping things up or remembering things we saw on TV that happened to somebody else. And it makes us panic and come up with scenarios that may not ever even happen. And it's not even to say that when you take a leap of faith that everything's going to be perfect. When I moved here and took a leap of faith to move here with the job, I didn't have a car, remember? So I was, my sister was taking me to work for a little while and then her car broke down. So I ended up on the bus anyway. Just like what I didn't want to do back home. I thought it was too good to take the bus. I ended up on the bus anyway in a new city 2 weeks in. Had no idea where I was going, had no idea really how to navigate the bus system here because I didn't know how to get anywhere, but I had to get to work. So that's what I did. Took lifts, took buses, did what I had to do because it was go time. And so, yes, things are going to be challenging. Even when you take a leap of faith and you feel like, okay, I did it, things are getting better, you may be hit with a curveball and you have to adapt and navigate and adjust. So be flexible, be open, keep an open mind, stay encouraged, um, express when you're upset. It's okay to be frustrated, sad, angry, down, confused. All of those things are valid and keep moving forward anyway. So I really hope that this episode helps somebody. If you finished the whole episode, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I will be, of course, making more episodes from now on, being more consistent with getting back on here and just sharing lessons that I've learned in the last year or so, what lessons I'm currently learning, and just having more people, more guests on here. So look forward to more consistent episodes from now on. If you have any like ideas or things, topics that you want to me to talk about, or guests that like topics that I can have a guest on about, let me know in the comments. Let me know on social media, TikTok at I just want to be underscore awakened. And just stay tuned. Thank you for listening. Thank you everybody for listening, for supporting on this journey. And I'm really excited for where my life is headed right now. Things are so much better than they were last year. And I'm grateful that I went through all of that because it made me even more grateful when things got better. It helped me to take care of things better, to be grateful for things better and honor and cherish them because I know what it's like to be without them. So stay tuned. I hope you have the best day ever, and I'll see you on the next episode.